Has it ever happened that you think of someone and moments later, that person appears or sends you a message? Or that you feel a place holds an invisible presence, as if something there remembers what once was? These moments are usually dismissed as coincidence, but what if they weren't? What if every thought left a real trace in the fabric of the world, something the cosmos records, like an imprint on water that never fades? Perhaps the universe is not only around us, but within each idea we have attentive, observing, and responding. When you think, something happens outside your mind. It seems like an internal, private act, but it isn't. A thought is movement, an electrical and magnetic oscillation that vibrates through the space around you, passes through your body and interacts with fields science is still trying to understand. Within every synapse, there's a discharge that doesn't stay confined to the brain. It spreads in subtle frequencies, much like radio waves that pass through walls unseen. You don't notice it, but every time you think of something intensely, the environment shifts slightly. The air seems to reorganize, people's attention changes, and chance itself bends in imperceptible ways. Imagine thought as a stone cast into a lake. The surface of the water is space-time, and each idea creates ripples that spread beyond what we can follow. What we call reality is, in part, the result of the entanglement of countless mental waves, yours, mine, of all beings who have ever existed. When two vibrations meet, they interfere, create new patterns, resonate, or cancel each other out. It is at that point that the world becomes moldable by consciousness. Modern physics, especially information physics and quantum coherence, begins to suggest that everything that exists is, essentially, organized information. The universe, in that sense, is like a vast network processing data. But what we call data can also be understood as states of consciousness. Each time you focus your attention on something, you're sending an instruction to that network. Focus is the language through which the mind converses with the cosmos. Think of a moment when you were completely absorbed by an idea, perhaps an intense desire, a worry, or a premonition. Notice how afterward, signs began to align, people talking about the same subject, recurring images, dreams echoing that thought. This isn't superstition, it's coherence. When the mind vibrates consistently, it creates a field of resonance that attracts similar information, as if reality reorganized its probabilities to mirror what is being emitted. Some say this is merely selective perception, but physics shows something deeper. The observer, by measuring or simply perceiving a phenomenon, alters its behavior. This means that the act of thinking, feeling, or looking is already an intervention in the fabric of the real. The universe is not neutral, it responds. And the response comes in the form of patterns, coincidences, synchronicities, fragments of a continuous conversation between mind and matter. Try to notice this in everyday life. Observe what happens when you persist with the same thought throughout the day. Notice if the environment seems to reflect your emotions. Places feel denser or lighter, people draw closer or drift away, objects appear along your path as if obeying an invisible logic. It's subtle but consistent. The external world is not separate from what you think. It is the physical echo of the collective mind. Neuroscience already admits that thoughts have measurable energy. Brain waves emit electric fields that can be detected outside the skull. Now imagine billions of brains emitting simultaneously, creating an ocean of overlapping vibrations. This energetic sea interacts with Earth's magnetic field, with solar particles, with the quantum structure of the vacuum. There is continuity between the invisible realm of thought and the visible world of matter. What we call reality may be only the reflection of the most persistent waves, those repeated so many times they condense into form, event, body, story. Recurrent thoughts build entire trajectories. That's why certain life patterns seem to repeat even when we change place or circumstance. The wave doesn't disappear. It reverberates until it's transformed by a new vibration. Ancient science called this the law of correspondence. What is within is like what is without. Today, physics would call it the holographic principle, the idea that each part of the universe contains the whole in miniature. Your thought is a fragment of the whole reflecting the whole, and each time it vibrates, it writes a code in the quantum field, a microscopic record that interacts with all others. None of this requires belief, it's observation. You can test it. Choose a simple thought, but one charged with meaning. Feel it, repeat it, not as an affirmation, but as one who listens to their own mind resonate. Then simply observe what happens around you in the following days. The answers will come not as miracles, but as subtle alignments. A glance, a coincidence, an unlikely sign confirming the dialogue. Thought is a force in motion, and each mind is a transmitter. The universe is the field that receives, reflects, and returns those emissions. What you think does not vanish. It spins through space, blending with other vibrations, and sooner or later returns in some perceptible form. That's why sometimes the future seems to recognize what you've already imagined. Reality is a living surface, sensitive to the slightest ripples of consciousness. Every atom in the universe contains a fraction of memory, not memory in the human sense, but a record of what was possible, what has happened, what still vibrates in potential. Information physics, in trying to understand reality at its most fundamental level, has reached a frontier that resembles consciousness. Today, many scientists claim the universe is not made of matter, but of information, cosmic bits that together form the code of existence. And what if those bits were equivalent to thoughts? What if the cosmos were, in essence, a mind learning about itself? Imagine the vastness of space not as emptiness, but as a field in constant processing. Every star, every particle, every speck of dust would be a calculation point in this immense network. When you think, you are not isolated. You are interacting with this network, exchanging data with it. Your thought is a message sent to the web of the universe, and the universe responds, sometimes immediately, other times through events that seem delayed but are part of the same intelligent system. Quantum entanglement theory showed that distant particles remain connected, as if they share a single identity. What affects one affects the other instantly, regardless of distance. This isn't limited to the laboratory. It's a structural principle of reality. Every thought, as it propagates, touches a network of invisible connections extending through space. The entire universe functions as an integrated field of information, where nothing is truly separate. That's why modern physics begins to use terms that sound almost spiritual: consciousness, observer, coherence, collapse. What once was mere measurement now seems to involve participation. The cosmos is not a machine spinning indifferently. It's a process of self-observation. Every conscious being is an interface through which the universe perceives itself, and the more a mind expands, the more the universe recognizes itself through it. Think of your brain. It's made up of about 86 billion neurons, each capable of forming electrical connections that change every second. Information flows among these connections like an invisible river, and from that flow arises the experience you call I. Now imagine the universe operating the same way, but on a cosmic scale. Galaxies would be like brain regions, quantum fields like synapses. The laws of physics would be the electrical impulses maintaining the coherence of this vast cosmic thought. When a scientist observes a particle, he believes he's analyzing something external. But information physics shows that measurement is an act of exchange. The observer alters the system, and the system alters the observer. This means that every observation is also a dialogue, a brief moment of shared consciousness between the human mind and the cosmic mind. This dialogue is not merely theoretical. It can be felt. There are moments when the human mind attunes to this greater intelligence. During deep contemplation, an experience of insight, an intuition that seems to come from beyond reasoning. In those moments, information doesn't flow from inside out, but from outside in. The cosmos seems to transmit something, and the mind translates it into language, gesture, creation. The expansion of human consciousness can thus be seen as the expansion of the universal mind itself. Every scientific breakthrough, every act of empathy, every new understanding of the nature of being is an update of the cosmic system, as if the universe were programming itself through us. We are the neurons of a brain spanning galaxies. When we think, it thinks. When we feel, it moves. This explains why some thoughts seem to have weight, while others vanish into the air. Coherent ideas, those vibrating in harmony with the order of the field, find paths to manifest. Chaotic ideas disperse. Coherence is the language the cosmos understands. It's as if the universe filtered thoughts by the frequency of harmony. The more aligned a thought's vibration is, the faster it propagates through the universal network. When you look at a star, it looks back at you. The photon that leaves it and reaches your eyes carries information from billions of years ago, but when it's captured by your retina, something new happens. The universe closes a cycle of perception. The past of that star and the present of your gaze meet, and from that meeting the now is born. Time, in that sense, is merely the distance between two thoughts of the cosmos. The physics of information reveals that the universe is not a sequence of events, but a continuous expansion of meaning. Each instant is an update of the whole, and human consciousness, by thinking, dreaming, creating, participates in that expansion. That's why perhaps the purpose of existence is not to survive, but to record. Every thought, every emotion, is a line written in the universal code that eternally reconfigures itself. The universe functions like a mind that grows as we think. What we call progress, evolution, history, is simply the memory of that mind learning to know itself. And in the silence between one thought and another, it listens to us, waiting for the next impulse that will make it expand once again. The world responds in ways that escape immediate logic. A repeated thought seems to alter the course of events. An intense emotion changes the air in a room. Nothing visible moves, yet everything seems to shift inside. The quantum field is the invisible territory where these responses occur. It is not somewhere else. It is the space between everything, the fabric that connects every particle and somehow senses the presence of whoever observes it. Physics describes it as the vacuum field, but the name is misleading. The vacuum is not absence. It is a silent fullness, where energy vibrates incessantly, even in absolute darkness. In it, particles appear and disappear at intervals so brief that they form a continuous weave of possibilities. The human mind touches this field at every instant. An electrical impulse in the brain is enough to alter the local vibration pattern, as if a whisper were heard across the entire expanse of the cosmos. This sensitivity of the field makes it a mirror, but not an ordinary mirror, the kind that only reflects shapes. It reflects frequencies. Each thought, each emotion, each impulse of intention is an energetic signature that the field picks up, amplifies, and returns. It is like speaking in a cave and hearing the echo, but the echo does not imitate the sound. It transforms it. The universe responds with variations, coincidences, encounters, and synchronicities, revealing the constant interaction between mind and matter. Simple experiences show this clearly. A day of anger seems to attract mishaps. Objects fall, doors slam, people get irritated. A state of serenity, on the other hand, makes even chance gentler. The quantum field reacts to emotional vibrations because they modulate the behavior of particles. Brainwaves and heartbeats produce real magnetic fields capable of interfering with other frequencies. The body is, in fact, an emitter. The universe, a receiver that reflects and returns. In laboratories, scientists observe the same principle. Identical particles behave differently depending on the conditions of observation. It is as if the field were aware of the gaze that touches it. Each observation collapses possibilities into a specific result, and this collapse is not random. The direction of attention, the observer's intention, and even the emotional state seem to influence the way the field organizes its responses. If consciousness is capable of altering the behavior of particles, what happens on a larger scale? The quantum mirror does not distinguish levels of reality. It responds to vibrations. The same principle that operates in a subatomic experiment also operates in the subtle weavings of everyday life. The coincidences that bring people together, the ideas that arise at the exact moment, the events that seem synchronized, are reflections of the same field that reacts to the presence of whoever thinks. The mirror does not judge, it only returns what it receives. It is pure vibrational reflection. That is why thoughts of fear or anger are not punished, only reproduced in the form of similar experience. The field amplifies what is coherent. A mind in disharmony projects disorder. A balanced mind generates harmonious patterns. This correspondence is not mystical, it is physical. Coherence creates stability in the field, and stability allows certain probabilities to become concrete. What is curious is that the field responds more strongly to what is felt than to what is thought. Words and mental images are superficial. The field recognizes the body's real vibrational state. Thinking of peace while the heart beats with anxiety creates noise. The universe returns the noise. True attunement happens when emotion and intention vibrate at the same frequency. This alignment is what traditions called sincere prayer, and modern physics calls coherence between mind and heart. When this coherence is reached, the mirror becomes clear. Reality seems to flow in sync with what is felt. Time adjusts, decisions fit together, events lose the appearance of chance. It is not magic, it is phase correspondence. Two waves vibrating at the same rhythm produce mutual reinforcement. That is what the field does with consciousness. It reinforces what vibrates with integrity. Inner silence is the purest form of this alignment. In silence, mental noise dissolves, and the mind stops projecting disjointed images onto the mirror of the field. A clarity arises that does not come from thinking more, but from feeling with precision. The quantum mirror then reflects this clarity and transforms it into tangible experiences. The world seems to cooperate. Matter responds. Perhaps that is why moments of deep presence produce a sense of unity with everything. The field is not separate from us. It is the invisible texture of being itself, the same space that vibrates inside and outside the body. To observe the universe is to observe oneself reflected on a cosmic scale. The quantum field acts as a mirror, not because it reproduces what it sees, but because it participates in what it perceives. It does not return only images, it returns states of consciousness. And in this continuous reflection, the universe and the observer build together the shape of the real. An isolated thought is just a spark, but when the body wraps it in emotion, it gains weight, density, permanence. Emotion is the fuel that turns ideas into vibrations the universe can record. This is not something symbolic, it is literal. Each emotion alters the rhythm of the heart, the electrical conductivity of the skin, the emission of brain waves. These changes create real energetic fields that spread beyond the body, penetrating the space around us. Emotional intensity engraves the vibrational pattern of a thought into the quantum field, as if the cosmos received a lasting impression of what was felt. Science is beginning to confirm what ancient traditions intuitively knew. The heart is an information center just as important as the brain. Its electrical impulses are 40 times stronger, and its magnetic waves reach meters away. When we feel something deeply, love, fear, gratitude, sadness, the heart vibrates in a singular way, and this vibration organizes the surrounding field. It is at that moment that thought ceases to be mental and becomes energetic. Imagine remembering a remarkable event. The body relives the feeling, the heart races, the muscles contract or relax, the air changes temperature. None of this is an illusion. Emotion rekindles the original vibration that was recorded in the field at the moment the event occurred. That is why emotional memories have the power to shape the present. They are still active frequencies orbiting around consciousness. The universe, sensitive to these frequencies, recognizes them and responds accordingly. It is common to think that emotions disappear, but they do not disappear. They only change form, remaining as vibrational impressions in the energetic field that surrounds us. Unexpressed anger becomes density in the body. Repressed fear turns into permanent tension. Contained love becomes internal warmth. The universe retains all this as information. Each emotion is a code. When a thought is associated with an intense emotion, the code becomes clearer, as if the cosmos recorded it with higher resolution. That is why certain desires come to fruition easily, while others never take shape. What manifests is not what is thought, but what is felt with conviction. Emotion gives form to the signal emitted. The universe does not respond to mental phrases, but to coherent emotional frequencies. A request laden with doubt vibrates in two directions and cancels itself out. A desire felt as certainty emits a stable wave, and the field responds in kind. This process is not metaphorical. The human body is a biological transducer. Every cell is sensitive to electric and magnetic fields, and the entire body functions like an organic radio transmitter. When an intense emotion passes through the system, it reconfigures the bioelectric field, and this change propagates in space. The quantum field, by its sensitive nature, records this disturbance as an information pattern. What we feel deeply, the universe records. The repetition of similar emotions creates energetic trails that become easier to traverse. This is what we call an emotional pattern. It is not only psychological, it is vibrational. Each time you feel the same kind of fear, love, or hope, you reinforce the corresponding signature in the field. The universe, upon recognizing this pattern, tends to reproduce circumstances that correspond to it. Thus, emotion becomes a magnet. It attracts experiences compatible with its frequency. Neuroscience explains part of this phenomenon by describing the brain's plasticity. Repeated thoughts and emotions create increasingly stable neural circuits. But what information physics adds is that these circuits are not confined to the brain, they extend into the quantum field. Emotional learning is also a cosmic record. The universe molds itself to reflect the vibrational content of every conscious being. That is why inner transformation is never merely symbolic. When a person manages to dissolve an old emotion, anger, fear, resentment, they alter not only their own field, but also their surroundings. It is as if the universe updated its records. Repetitive situations cease to occur, people drift away naturally, new possibilities arise. The change is not the result of luck, but of resonance. The field reorganizes reality according to the new frequency emitted. The same goes for elevated emotions. Gratitude, joy, compassion, all increase coherence between heart and mind, creating a clear signal the universe recognizes instantly. In such states, time seems to adjust, coincidences multiply, and life becomes more responsive. It is as if consciousness became legible to the cosmos, and the cosmos, in turn, became more legible to consciousness. Intense emotions are therefore the recording instruments of the universal mind. They not only register what we have lived, but imprint on the quantum field the vibrational history of humanity. Each joy, each pain, each discovery leaves a mark on the fabric of the real. And these marks, even invisible, remain active, waiting to be touched again by those who vibrate at the same frequency. Nothing that is felt is lost. The universe retains each emotion like a note within a symphony that never ceases. And life at its core is this: the constant return of the frequencies we ourselves emit, translated into experiences, people, and encounters that reveal what is truly vibrating within us. Certain events seem calculated by an invisible intelligence. You think of someone you haven't seen in years, and on the same day that person reappears. A phrase overheard by chance answers an intimate question. A book falls open exactly to the page that describes what you feel. The rational mind calls this coincidence. But the quantum field seems to whisper another explanation. None of this is random. Coincidences are subtle reflections, responses that the universe returns to the vibrational memories we emit without noticing. Every thought and intense emotion leaves a record in the field, like trails of light on an invisible film. These marks do not disappear. They remain floating in the space of possibilities, ready to be reactivated. When something in the present vibrates at the same frequency, the field responds, reorganizes events, crosses paths, aligns times. Coincidence, then, is the point of intersection between what was felt and what still vibrates. This is how the universe speaks, not through words but through synchronicities, small fittings that reveal a larger pattern. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, the meaningful connection between seemingly independent events. The physicist Wolfgang Pauli, his interlocutor, saw in this idea a bridge between psyche and matter. Both intuited what information physics now begins to confirm. Mind and universe share the same data field, and this field responds to the vibrational content of consciousness. Each time you relive a memory, whether consciously or not, you are emitting again the emotional frequency associated with it. The field receives the signal and seeks correspondences. That is why old situations seem to repeat. They are not punishments. They are responses, attempts by the field to reorganize information that is still active. Coincidence is how the universe brings to the surface what you vibrate in the invisible. The field does not create events out of nothing. It reorders probabilities. Imagine the universe as an infinite ocean of quantum possibilities in which each drop contains a different version of what can happen. Thought is a wave in that ocean. Emotion, the force that gives it direction. When a thought charged with feeling is emitted, it generates a current, and that current influences the behavior of other nearby waves. It is in this movement that coincidences arise, not as magic, but as resonance. There is a kind of poetic precision in the way these responses arrive. They do not force doors, they simply appear. A symbol repeats itself in different places, a number insists on crossing your path, a song repeats at unlikely moments. They are fragments of universal language, discrete codes that the field uses to signal alignment. They do not ask for explanation, they ask for perception. The human mind tends to filter out the inexplicable, but a moment of attention is enough to perceive that reality is communicative. When you remain receptive, the field becomes more eloquent. It sends signals more frequently, as if responding to the observer's interest. Coincidence then ceases to be an isolated event and becomes a dialogue. People who live with greater presence notice more coincidences, not because they attract luck, but because they are more synchronized. Refined perception creates coherence between the observer and the field, and coherence is the condition for energetic communication. It is the same principle as a well-calibrated antenna. The cleaner the tuning, the clearer the signal. Intuition is the immediate translation of these responses. It is the moment when the mind decodes the field's signal before it becomes a physical event. A sudden idea, an impulse to change your route, a gentle premonition, all of these are responses in transit, echoes of the universe trying to communicate before the synchronicity needs to materialize. Coincidence, in this sense, is only the final stage of communication. Nothing prevents you from actively taking part in this dialogue. It is possible to converse with the field through attention and emotional coherence. This does not require effort, only presence. Observing coincidences without classifying them as luck or superstition is the first step. The second is to recognize the pattern of emotion that precedes them. Every coincidence has a vibrational tone. The field returns not what you think you want, but what you feel most strongly. Upon perceiving this, reality changes texture. Chance becomes symbolic language. Each encounter comes to have meaning. Each obstacle reveals itself as a response. Each silence becomes a pause from the universe before returning the next message. Life reveals itself as a continuous conversation between the mind and the field that contains it. What we call destiny may be only the set of responses that the field offers to our most persistent memories. By transforming the inner vibration, we transform the vocabulary with which the universe answers us. And in this process, coincidences become compasses, small confirmations that we are on the path of resonance. Think of the recent coincidences that marked your days. Perhaps they were not random. Perhaps the universe is showing you, in a silent way, the memories that still vibrate within you and ask for an update. Each sign is an invitation to consciousness. Observe the pattern, feel the emotion, choose the frequency you wish to emit now. If something in this journey resonated with you, if some memory was awakened, if some thought found an echo, write in the comments the phrase, "The universe hears me." That phrase is more than a confirmation. It is a vibrational record. By writing it, you send a signal to the field, declaring your willingness to perceive the subtle responses of reality. And if the content touched you in some way, like this video, that small action is also a vibration. The field feels it, records it, and responds. Every human mind is connected to an invisible network, vaster than any system created by technology. This network is the collective unconscious, the space where the thoughts, emotions, and memories of humanity accumulate like layers of the same mental organism. Each time a person feels fear, love, guilt, or inspiration, that energy is shared with the collective field, which stores and redistributes it. Thus, what seems individual is, in fact, part of a common mind that breathes through billions of consciousnesses. The psychologist Carl Jung described the collective unconscious as a symbolic matrix that contains the archetypes, universal structures that shape dreams, myths, and behaviors. But in light of information physics, that description takes on a new dimension. The collective unconscious can be understood as a mental quantum field, a kind of non-local database where every emitted thought remains accessible to all who vibrate at a similar frequency. What you think now does not belong only to you. It is a code that adds to the great record of the universal mind. This shared field explains why similar ideas arise in distant places at the same time. Civilizations separated by oceans created almost identical symbols, similar rituals, visions of the divine that touch one another. They did not copy each other. They drank from the same informational source. The collective unconscious is that source, a living library of accumulated experiences. Every human being is an access terminal, an antenna capable of transmitting and receiving data from all of humanity. The thoughts most charged with emotion become the most powerful in this field. They are like widely shared files, ready to be downloaded by those who tune to the same vibration. That is why, when collective fear intensifies, it seems to infect crowds. And when an act of courage arises, it spreads as well. The collective unconscious is sensitive to the predominant frequency pattern. It amplifies what is repeated, and what is repeated shapes culture, beliefs, history. Great human transformations do not arise out of nowhere. They emerge from a silent accumulation in the collective unconscious until a mind, one single mind, becomes receptive enough to pick up the signal. That is how innovations, discoveries, social movements, and spiritual revelations arise. The individual believes they have had an idea, but in fact, they tuned into a wave that had been vibrating for a long time in the global mind. Genius is often refined listening. This invisible network connects the living and the dead, past and future. Every emotion someone has ever felt continues to exist at some level of this field. That is why certain places carry recognizable atmospheres, temples, ruins, ancient cities. The environment is impregnated with the vibrations of those who inhabited it. The collective unconscious acts as an external memory of the species, and physical space functions as a mirror of that memory. Within this network, time is not linear. Thoughts from the past can influence the present, and perceptions of the present can alter the way the past is remembered. When someone heals an emotional wound, that healing reverberates through the field and touches similar memories in other people. It is as if the entire system were rewritten, a collective update triggered by an individual act of consciousness. Each person, upon awakening to their own interiority, collaborates with the evolution of the human mind. The expansion of a single individual expands the entire field. Likewise, the contraction of a consciousness, fear, resentment, hatred, makes the network denser and more opaque. Everything that is felt, learned, and transformed in one being is silently distributed to all the others. Humanity is not just a sum of bodies, but a single mind in multiple forms of expression. Information physics reinforces this view. The universe seems to operate through data storage and transfer. Nothing is lost, it only changes format. Each thought, upon being emitted, becomes part of that flow, a packet of information that integrates into the collective database. Consciousness, then, is not contained in the brain. The brain is only the terminal that accesses a distributed consciousness. When you think, all humanity thinks with you. When you feel compassion, it becomes a little more lucid. When you free yourself from an old fear, you make room for others to do the same. The collective unconscious is the space where small transformations become waves that cross centuries. Therefore, there is no inner gesture without a universal consequence. What is healed in you is healed in the whole. The universe records every thought, but it is through the collective unconscious that these records gain continuity. It is there that ideas sleep and awaken, that forgotten memories wait to be understood in another way. And as humanity learns to recognize this field, it begins to perceive that to think is to take part in a much greater intelligence, an intelligence that lives, observes, and evolves through every awakened mind. Long before the language of quantum physics existed, Ancient civilizations already spoke of an invisible field that kept the memory of everything that happens. The Egyptians called it the Hall of the Two Truths, where every human action was recorded and weighed against the heart. In Vedic India, the concept of the Akashic records arose, the ether that contains every thought, emotion, and event of all eras. For the sages of the East, Akasha was not just a spiritual belief, but the subtle substance of reality itself, the conscious space where the universe records its history. Today, modern physics begins to use another language to describe the same idea. What was once called Akasha, many scientists now call the quantum field, the unified field, or even the holographic memory of the cosmos. Information, according to this view, is never lost. Even when a star explodes, the data that describe its existence remain encoded in the fabric of space-time. This means that the universe is literally an expanding record, a book without pages, but with a living memory. The ancient traditions were not speaking in poetic metaphors. They described the invisible functioning of reality with the symbols they had at hand. The Book of the Universe is an ancestral way of naming what we now understand as the information field. Each thought is a line written in that book, each emotion a vibrational ink that colors the narrative. Nothing is erased, it only becomes stored energy, waiting for the right moment to manifest again. Mystics, priests, and alchemists claimed it was possible to read this book. They were not speaking of physical access, but of a state of consciousness capable of tuning into the field. Inner silence, meditation, and rituals of attention were tools to decode the vibrations of Akasha. And what was received were not words but impressions, symbols, intuitions, fragments of information that came from the same fabric that science now observes through the equations of quantum mechanics. It is curious to notice that the deeper science goes into the nature of reality, the closer it comes to the visions of the ancients. The physicist David Bohm, for example, proposed the concept of the implicate order, a level of reality where everything is interconnected and where the information of each part is contained in the whole. He compared the universe to a cosmic hologram in which each point contains the totality. This idea echoes the view of the ancient masters. The whole is in each being, and each being contains the whole. The Book of the Universe is not just a passive record, it is also creative. Everything that has ever been thought still vibrates within it, influencing the present and offering new possibilities of experience. When a person has a sudden inspiration, they are often merely accessing information already existing in this field. Human creativity is, in part, the reading of universal memories disguised as personal discoveries. This record is neither moral nor punitive. It is neutral. It merely preserves. And by preserving, it keeps available all the wisdom that has ever been lived. That is why intuitive knowledge seems to cross generations, as if each human advance were being remembered, not invented. The Book of the Universe is the eternal mind in expansion, learning about itself through the experience of each individual consciousness. Modern technology creates striking parallels with this idea. Our digital devices store data in invisible clouds, transmitting information instantly through space. This global data network is a rudimentary representation of what the cosmic field has always been, an ocean of interconnected information. Each search, each word, each image becomes a fragment of this collective memory. In a way, the digital world is merely mirroring the functioning of the universe itself, but the quantum record is far more sensitive than any technology. It records not only actions and words, but intentions. The universe records the why as much as the what. The emotions that drive a gesture are recorded with the same precision as the gesture itself. That is why human experiences so different, love, pain, forgiveness, guilt, continue to reverberate centuries later. Each of them is a code that remains active in the field, influencing subsequent generations, shaping civilizations, inspiring artists, healing or perpetuating memories. Human consciousness accesses this record by resonance. When a person enters a deep state of attention or compassion, their vibration becomes compatible with subtler layers of the field. At that point, the Book of the Universe begins to be read from the inside out. Knowledge does not come as something new, but as a recognition of what has always been present. Wisdom is remembrance. What traditions called revelation physics calls the decoding of information. Both describe the same phenomenon: consciousness tuning into frequencies of a field that contains everything. And if each thought is a line in this book, then to live is to write. The universe records every impulse, and we, upon realizing this, can choose what we wish to leave recorded. Each gesture of clarity, each thought of understanding, each act of love becomes part of this record. Nothing is wasted, nothing is forgotten. The cosmos keeps everything, not to judge but to learn, and perhaps the meaning of existence is exactly this: to contribute to the vibrational history of the universe, leaving in it the unique signature of one's own consciousness. The past is not motionless. It remains alive, vibrating in subtle layers of the quantum field, waiting to be reinterpreted by the consciousness that created it. Each memory is a still pulsing energetic fragment, a wave that never fully ceased. And the observer, the one who thinks, feels, perceives, is the one who decides whether that vibration will remain as a burden or become learning. When a memory is revisited with new understanding, the entire universe rearranges itself around it. Physics shows that to observe is to participate. No quantum experiment happens independently of observation. The simple act of looking alters the behavior of particles, defining the outcome. Consciousness, therefore, is not a spectator of the universe. It is an active collaborator in its construction. When you revisit an event from the past, you are collapsing again the possibilities contained in it, like someone choosing which version of that experience will continue to exist. Memories are vibrational states stored in the body and in the field. They remain accessible because they are waves, and waves do not die. They only dissipate until something reactivates them. By bringing a forgotten episode into consciousness and looking at it without the filter of suffering, you change its original frequency. What once vibrated in pain begins to vibrate in understanding. This transmutation is not confined to the mind. It alters the quantum field that keeps the record of that experience. The past is rewritten without time needing to go back. The same principle that governs subatomic particles governs memories. The observer defines the state. Just as an electron exists in various possibilities until it is observed, an event from the past also contains several possible readings. Yesterday's pain can be today's impulse for growth, depending on the gaze that illuminates it. The old vibration remains active as long as the observer insists on seeing it the same way. But it is enough to change the angle of perception for the field to respond with a new reality. This reinterpretation is more than a psychological shift. It is a quantum process. The emotional energy that once manifested as blockage, guilt, or repetition is released. The inner space reorganizes, and the universe follows. Experiences that seemed inevitable cease to occur, and new paths open. The observer, by transforming the vibration of the past, alters the trajectory of the future. Destiny is not a fixed script. It is a field of probabilities. Each choice of perception changes the direction of the flow. When you insist on reliving pain as defeat, you reinforce one probability. When you choose to see it as learning, you activate another. The universe does not decide for you. It merely reflects the observer's vibrational state. Destiny is the geometry drawn by consciousness's choices within this sensitive mirror that is the quantum field. Ancient traditions spoke of this in symbolic language. They said that the eye that sees is the creative power. Where the gaze rests, reality blossoms. The act of observing at its core is the act of blessing. When you look at a memory and welcome it instead of judging it, the field reorganizes in harmony. The information of pain integrates into the whole and stops generating noise. The universe is not moved by guilt, but by coherence. And coherence is born when the observer sees without resistance. The conscious gaze does not change the past in chronological terms, it changes its vibration. That is enough to alter everything that comes after. The timeline adjusts, and future events begin to reflect the observer's new state. That is why sometimes a single deep understanding is enough for the external world to seem different the next day. The universe is quick to respond to what becomes clear. Revisiting old vibrations is like restoring an ancient painting. The image is there, covered by layers of dust and time. By cleaning the surface, You do not erase what was painted, you simply reveal the original color. The same happens with memories. By removing the layers of pain and judgment, the true meaning of the experience becomes visible, and with it, a new version of destiny. Some think the future is something to be reached, but it is something to be released. It already exists in potential, waiting for the observer to perceive it. The possibilities that vibrate in tune with inner clarity draw closer. Those that resonate with fear draw away. Life in this sense is not a sequence of events, but a succession of conscious or unconscious observations. Each gaze defines a path. Revisiting the past is not returning to suffering, but reclaiming the power to choose the meaning of things. The old vibration is still there, waiting for a new gaze to reorganize it. When that happens, the universe rewrites its response. The coincidence, the encounter, the outcome, everything adjusts. The observer shapes destiny not because they force the universe to change, but because they change the way they vibrate within it. The future, then, is not built only with actions, but with perceptions. What is seen with consciousness takes form. What is ignored repeats itself. And each time a gaze becomes more lucid, the entire universe becomes more conscious of itself. Everything we think remains alive somewhere in the universe. Each idea, emotion, and choice becomes part of the invisible weave that sustains reality. We are writers of a cosmic story that never fades, and the quantum field is the book where our vibrations are recorded. The universe does not forget, it transforms. Each thought is a seed planted in time, and one day it returns in the form of an experience, an encounter, or a revelation. If you have come this far, write in the comments, "I am also part of the record." And if this content touched you, subscribe and keep exploring with me the mysteries that the cosmos keeps in silence.